Hello, good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see so many of you here on this lovely day at the garden. I appreciate you. I appreciate whatever patience you had to use to find parking today. A pro tip I gave to a few of you and no longer will be a secret, but I will say one thing if you ever struggle to find parking on the lot, a great tip when you know you're coming to this building, the East building, the event center, is right on Tower Grove. There's usually parking, and our pedestrian gate, which is just right there, is open when the garden's open. So you can just use that little pedestrian gate and walk right into this building. So if ever you're struggling, I'm giving you my secret parking spot away. So remember that. Anyway, my name is Kate Gleason, and I'm the membership director here at the garden. As I always do, any brand new members joining us for the first time to a speaker series today? Okay, a few. That's good. Well, welcome to your first speaker series. And for all of you who have joined us before, thank you for coming again. Before I introduce our fabulous team from Bowood Farms, I want to point out a few events coming up. Later this month, you might have seen in the bulletin that just dropped, we will be welcoming the Garden Conservancy for their national speaking tour on September 26th. This is a paid lecture. It's $45 for a member, but the national speaking tour is organized by the Garden Conservancy, and they bring leading practitioners and thinkers within the world of gardening to audiences throughout the United States. So it's pretty great that they've chosen the Missouri Botanical Garden as one of their sites. I know they've been in New York, and they've been at the New York Botanic Garden, and they've been around the country. So we're excited that they're coming. For this year's tour, the Garden Conservancy will be bringing the partners from Hollander Landscape Architects to discuss the changing beauty, refuge, and joy that outdoor spaces provide, with examples from their own portfolio, from sprawling coastal retreats to country estates. I've looked online at some of the gardens that they've done, both rooftop gardens, gardens in the Hamptons, gardens all over the world, and they're stunning. And I know it's going to be a really photo-rich program that they're going to present. The program's going to take place on September 26th. It's an evening program at 6 p.m. And again, as a member, it's $45. That's a $10 discount. And it does include a wine reception afterwards. If you're interested in that program, you will register through the Garden Conservancy, but the event can be found on our website, or you can always call the phone number on the back of your membership card for help to register. An event you don't have to register for, but you should just come to, is Best of Missouri Market, our annual fall festival, which will take place October 4th, 5th, and 6th. One change to this year's program, we've been shifting the hours of the Friday, the first day of the market. So now we're going to open the market up. It had opened up at noon last year. The market's going to open up at 9 a.m. early on Friday. So we'll open every day at 9 a.m. But on Saturday, October 5th, we do have an early hour for members only to get a little jump. Really, it's for members to get first dibs on parking. That's kind of the whole reason we do that. So keep in mind that's a great time to come. But all throughout the weekend, we're also going to be right back in this space for our new Makers stage, where we'll have demonstrations, including one from a team member of Bowood on botanical sketching. We'll have demonstrations on pie making, on charcuterie. I'm trying to think some other ones, some great fall gardening tips. So throughout the weekend, we'll have demos going on in here. So if you're at the market and need a break from all the shopping, this is a great place to do that. And finally, just a plug for our next speaker series. I'm sure you saw in the bulletin, our next speaker series will take place on October 29th. The title of the program is called Planting Clues: How Plants Solve Crimes. And it will be a scientist, a professor, and an author who's written a book about how plants and plant forensics have been used to solve some famous cases and some lesser known cases throughout history. So pretty interesting, right before Halloween. So it should be kind of a fun one to get us all into the mood. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Lizzy, Rickard, and Kathie Hoyer from Bowood Farms, the fabulous garden center that I'm sure everybody's aware of in the Central West End. Lizzy runs Bowood Farms along with her family members, siblings, Catherine and Alex McFeeters, and her mother, Connie McFeeters. Lizzy works side by side with her late father, John, to create the urban oasis that is now Bowood Farms. Today, Lizzy wears many hats, including buying, merchandising, and deciding which plants the production team grows for the nursery at her fourth-generation family farm in Clarksville, Missouri. Lizzy is surrounded by talented staff who assist in creating an environment that promotes plant love and urban beautification. How many people have been to Bowood Farms? Just show of hands. I might have stole that question for you guys, but a good number. So you've got fans in the audience. Kathie Hoyer began planting in her University City backyard when she was just 13 years old and has been experimenting and researching plants ever since. She is one of the integral team members at Bowood Farms, where you can find her teaching classes classes, giving lectures, and overseeing the nursery. She spends the winter months researching, creating plant care guides, and writing plant descriptions for the Bowood website and plant library. In the warmer months, you can find her on nursery grounds, caring for plants and helping customers to make the best selection for their garden needs. So please join me in welcoming them for this very timely talk on fall planters.
Thank you, Kate, for the introduction, and thank you all for coming out today to hear about Bowood Farms and how to transition your container plantings for the fall season and other design tips. Kathie and I both enjoy talking with customers at the store and helping them create unique plant combinations, both in the ground and in containers. So creating this talk has been a fun as we have worked together to put down on paper the ideas and design concepts that have come from these conversations. But first, I'd like to give a quick history of Bowood Farms and our location just north of here in the Central West End. Yes, I was going to ask how many of you have been there, and it's really wonderful to see. I appreciate it. Some of you maybe even have followed along with our transformations throughout the years. Was anyone in this room familiar with Bowood Farms prior to our retail location when we were strictly a wholesale grower? Yeah, that's really fun to know that there's a couple of people out there that remember those days. So Bowood Farms, the business, was started by my dad, John McFeeters, in the late 80s. But the farm in Clarksville received its name from my great-grandparents when they bought the property in the 1930s. The name for the farm, they named the farm after the many Osage orange trees that created hedgerows on the property. The wood from the Osage orange trees was used by indigenous people of the region to create bows for hunting, which led to the trees commonly being called by early settlers Bowood trees. There's also a country house and estate in England called Bowood House. So from the combination of the abundant Osage orange trees and this great estate, the name for the farm was born. Throughout its history, the farm has seen many incarnations. Our family spent years raising cattle, bison, wheat, soybeans, and corn. While we no longer have any livestock, our farm is still a working farm in addition to the plant nursery. Both my brother and I started working for our dad on the farm and nursery in our young 20s. That is not him. That's Ruby. We both commuted back and forth from St. Louis as we never lived on the farm. Some of my first jobs were helping to pull plant orders, clean up and tag the plants for shipment, and help create and edit our extensive yearly plant catalog. I often found myself wandering the fields and benches for perennials, Missouri natives, grasses, herbs, and shrubs, and wishing that our customers and the public could see these amazing plants in person. This was before the internet as we know it, and our main form of communication with our customers was a weekly, who are retail garden centers and independent landscapers throughout the region, was a weekly faxed list called the Blooming Beauties. You might remember it. This list let others know which plants were blooming, budded, or just full foliage. Our customers would then fax back their order based off of this list. To this day, we still have a weekly Blooming Beauties list, which is what I use to select the plants we receive each week fresh from the farm to the Central West End store. Because of this desire to connect our plants with people, my dad and I started discussing opening a retail location in St. Louis. My brother and I had been selling bison and herbs at the Clayton Farmers Market each Saturday, and there the farm to table and shop local movements were both gaining traction. We started driving around looking at various locations for a store when he was told about a large boarded up brick building in need of a lot of repairs in the Central West End. Having grown up in the Central West End, there was a sense of returning home. My brother, husband, and others started demoing and rebuilding the main store in 2005, and we opened the bright chartreuse gates, green doors of Bowood in April 2006, with racks of Bowood-grown perennials, herbs, and shrubs lining the front sidewalk and the west lot that was once full of broken down cars. Because this stretch of olive was off the beaten path, people commented that we were an oasis in the city. It's always fun to look back at the old pictures and realize where we've come from. The neighborhood was welcoming, and we continued to expand our footprint with the opening of Cafe Osage, now Bowood by Niche, in 2008. A few years later, we expanded across the alley into what is now the nursery area. Here we could display the plants in a garden-esque fashion so that customers walk amongst the sun perennials and view them from above. We also created arrangements and plants to show various design options and interesting combinations. Next came the studio, which opened in 2016. This renovated house was converted into a bright white open space for workshops and classes on various topics such as art, floral design, and of course, plant design and maintenance. Our home and, Our home and gift shop, Holiday, opened across Olive in 2018. My sister Catherine runs Holiday, which was named after our great-grandmother, Ida Holiday, who, along with her husband, bought the Clarksville farm. When you enter Holiday, you are initially struck by the fragrance of candles and beautiful cut flowers from the lush landscape displays around the property. Our philosophy for the plant nursery and stores has always been about creating connections between the natural world and your home, even in the middle of the city. Urban renewal was important to us, along with creating a sense of beauty and calm amidst the hard surfaces of brick, concrete, and asphalt. We have integrated cohesive new construction and an appreciation for woodworking with each rehab project, and have used reclaimed materials and many green building practices throughout. Each extension of the business has allowed us to connect with our customers and community in new and exciting ways. Having now been on the block for 18 years, we are rooted here and look forward to continuing to be a positive community asset. Kathie joined the team in 2008 and has grown into the role of plant educator. As was mentioned in her bio, she does all of the research for our website, plant information tags, and in-store signage. She takes this information to create our plant education classes and plant care guides. We always knew we wanted to have an education and knowledge-based store, and Kathie has been instrumental in making this happen. With the new venture, we let go of our old print catalog and transferred these efforts into our website. We were one of the first local nurseries to launch a plant-centric website that has loads of information about all the plants we grow. I might say it rivals Mobot's. Kathie and I discuss a lot of ideas about topics and trends while standing out with the plants, and Kathie helps turn my musings into content. For this talk especially, she has been able to put down on paper the concepts we use when creating our container plantings throughout the store and restaurant. We, of course, want the place to always look top-notch, and we hope to inspire others to bring beauty to their home. We refreshed some of our containers just last week, and it felt so good to let go of the worn-out, sun-drenched summer items and replace them with fresh fall favorites. Now we get to watch these new plantings fill in and grow. Creating displays and color combinations brings me a lot of personal joy and satisfaction. I've always enjoyed color and pattern and have been influenced by the fashion industry. I remember being introduced to Liberty fabrics and William Morris prints and falling in love with the color combinations and patterns. Both styles draw a lot of inspiration from nature, and there is an obvious connection between fashion, interior design, and nature. I love observing fashion trends, especially with color and the seasonal changes. In discussing this talk, Kathie and I referred to fashion quite a bit. For example, this talk is about transitioning your containers from summer to fall to winter. And it could easily relate to changing out your wardrobe for the new season as well. And with that, I am now going to turn it over to Kathie to share our thoughts on designing your autumn containers.
Our focus today is in creating containers with long-lasting combinations of plants that will take the display from summer to fall to winter. We're thinking about design, of course, but we're also going to venture a little bit into purpose and passion, do a little questioning of the why of gardening, especially investigating our goals when we are talking about gardening in containers, which, contrary to what most people say, is not easy. It's not one and done. Container gardening takes a lot of care and attention all summer long. We'll focus on three main areas: the containers themselves, thinking about placement, as well as the form of the plants as they grow into a coordinated shape. How to power up your choices of color and texture. And ongoing maintenance to make sure that the flow and the style of your planter continues to fulfill your purpose for the space, continues to feed and focus your desire, whatever that might be. Here is a container that welcomes students and customers to our studio in spring. Switched out for summer, then how it was transformed for fall, and then winter. Even though we have easy access to plants, we're busy with many things at Bowood. So our planters have to be designed to suit the parameters of where the containers are placed.
These pictures show the entrance to the courtyard and outdoor restaurant seating from Olive. We've created a cluster of concrete planters that can stay outside year-round to soften this corner and provide screening for the restaurant diners from the street. The large evergreen will be permanent, and the other plants will be changed out seasonally. We have also used large rectangular planters to create a barrier and highlight the walking lane versus the seating area. It is important to remember that your container plantings act as wayfinding elements to your home and in the garden.
Also, to promote what we are loving about our current offering.
Each season, there's a new plant that immediately catches my attention, and then I tend to base the rest of the design around this one element. This spring, it was a new to us viola called Penny Peach Jump Up. It was tricolor with purple, cream, and apricot petals and purple whiskers. When we did some summer switch outs, we chose two varieties of coleus to help highlight the colors we already had going on and a go-to pennisetum grass in anticipation of fall. This fall, it has been a new to us pansy mix called Pansy Delta Apple Cider that was love at first sight. It has beautiful soft vanilla, yellow, burgundy, purple, and red tones along with dark blotches. It's in one of these containers or boxes, and I'll show you it later. So that was that's where I drew the inspiration from. In the rectangular restaurant planters, I like to use fragrant herbal items each year. Last year we used rosemary, and this year we used citronella and eucalyptus. I used to always do full herbal combinations in the planters in front of Cafe Osage. We haven't switched the restaurant rectangles yet this year because the lantana and tropical asclepias are thriving. But when we do, we will add ornamental kale and pansies to head into the winter season, where we will then most likely dress it up with curly willow stems. Even though customers will no longer be sitting outside, these planters are still visible from inside the restaurant, and they still define that walking path we referred to earlier. So keeping them filled and looking good continues to be a priority even in the winter months. I think in general in gardening, thinking about your view from inside the house outside is always one to look at.
In addition, to last the season with minimal maintenance, and most importantly, to transition easily to the next season. The wonderful thing about autumn is the luxurious richness of the colors in both blooming flowers and in the wonderful foliage. And it's a good thing. Just when we're getting tired of the bright, jazzy colors of summer, we're able to make a tapestry out of some of the more unusual colors of fall. So deep purples and greens, as well as the more usual orange, red, and burgundy. We tend to slow down a bit in the fall, and it's a good time to challenge ourselves to produce something that reflects our own passions and desires, to get our own personal blend of colors, textures, height, gesture, and flow, planters that will surprise and delight us every time we look at them. This year, I've been inspired by David Matern, who is one of the gardeners at Chanticleer Gardens in Pennsylvania, who creates thoughtful vignettes with his planters. And here's a quote for you. Start by looking at the big picture, how things fit into the greater context of the garden. He talks about the importance of first thinking about the intent of your garden, the intent of your container placement within that garden. Is it for screening or creating a more intimate space? Does it draw focus to an existing line of sight? Do your planters accent a particular feature? Or maybe indicate a transition or connection to the rest of the garden? He actually does this in late winter by placing his empty planters in different spaces, experimenting, changing them out from year to year. And you might want to do that next March when the planters are empty and seeing where they might fit in a different way than you've had them for a long time, just before you come over to Bowood and buy some plants. Fall is also a good time for assessing what you've enjoyed this past season, what you might like to change out for next year. Meanwhile, think about what comes to mind when you think of autumn. Here's my little mood board. These are the words that came to me. These are my choices. Yours might be different. What are the colors and textures that say fall for you? These pictures, are all from a website that is called Color Palettes, and they break down the hues in a particular photograph to help you realize all the different possibilities within those plants. And while you might not be able to find all those colors in foliage or flower, sometimes your container will be able to provide the contrasting or complementary color, which may be the deciding factor when choosing a new container. In addition, the shape and the size of your containers can help you in designing your plant placement. A possible way to think about the shapes and the possible ultimate heights is to think of an egg shape, which is vertically symmetrical, but horizontally contrasting. For a lower, broader container, you can think of the plants as the taller end of the egg. For a tall, narrow pot, you can visualize the broader end of the egg on top. Next, we come to my favorite part of the design because it is endlessly experimental and because everyone comes up with a different solution. One of the ways I like to challenge my customers is to get them away from a single color domination. So they always say, my favorite color is, and in order to really see that color, it helps to set contrasts side by side. For the strongest contrast, each of the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, is paired with the opposite across the wheel, the secondary colors. So red with green, blue with orange, yellow with violet. But don't forget that all the tertiary colors can then be paired with their opposites as well. So red-orange with blue-green, blue-violet with yellow-orange, and yellow-green with red-violet. Here are some examples of primary with secondary colors blooming now and into fall. with a bright red echinacea, you already have the red with green. Pair yellow pansies and Denver daisies with the purple leaves of ornamental pepper or kale. And the blue pansies or asters can be contrasted with orange annual pennisetum.
So nature also does this within a single bloom or leaf. And this is the part I find myself seeing when I look at plants to create combinations. The color in the bloom or leaf is not solid. It is not a patch of color like a paint sample. Both flowers and foliage have shades and hues of color throughout. They have veins, ribs, fruits, centers, eyes, and halos. There's a lot of color variation in our native plants, and there's also a lot of science that goes into breeding plants for specific colors and patterns to create new introductions to the horticultural world. One of the fun parts about attending horticultural conferences is seeing these new introductions and the latest color combinations. Many of you may be familiar with floret flowers based in Oregon, and if you're not, I suggest you check them out. Erin was a cut flower grower who has turned her attention to breeding dahlias. Just the other day, she was sharing about a dahlia called Rhubarb and Custard. What a great name. What was really interesting about the video was seeing all the variation of flower colors when she started this dahlia from seed versus tuber. All were beautiful, and I just love listening to her describe the colors and textures as she saw them. When I look at these examples that Kathie has put together, I see the dark blue whiskers and yellow of the pansy, the yellow eye, and how it can play with the yellow rudbeckia and the brown tones of the rudbeckia center, and then how that can play with the green and yellow foliage of the pennisetum grass to bring it all together. I also love how the purple ribs of the ornamental kale work with the black and purple sheen of the ornamental pepper. Bring in the dark center of the echinacea to create another unusual combination. So even within each plant, you have these opposite colors that give them their uniqueness, and it is this uniqueness that you want to try to highlight with your design.
Likewise, if you're thinking about the tertiary colors and their opposites, you could pair a yellow-orange heuchera with a violet-blue caryopteris, a yellow-green ornamental kale with a violet-red celosia, and an orange-red chrysanthemum with the blue-green foliage of euphorbia. Now, as Lizzy mentioned, unlike a painter's palette where you can find pure primary colors and secondary blends, plants produce all sorts of in-betweens and blends of color. So thinking about the colors that are not complete contrast, but are not coordinating, instead of orange with blue, pair orange with purple. Instead of red with green, pair red with blue. Instead of violet red with yellow green, pair it violet red with pale orange. So here are some examples. Orange with purple, violet red with shades of pale orange, and cool blues with a bright red petunia, which is actually a great summer to fall choice. And of course, you can always find a supportive heuchera to emphasize your color choices. I've become aware that my boss, Lizzy, rather than thinking about the color wheel, creates her own designs in a more intuitive way, choosing particular plants that she groups together. And as soon as you see them, it becomes obvious. It's just exactly right. So Lizzy, when you look at these, what do you see?
Very flattering. Well, when I gathered some boxes of perennials and annuals yesterday to bring and end up choosing some very similar plant combinations, and we will discuss those later. I am really drawn to perennial sedum in the fall, the top right. The contrasting bloom and foliage is so unique. I think this one is Thunderhead. And the blooms last a long time. You get the bud stage, then the full bloom, and then you get this late fall color fade. For me, highlighting a perennial that is in its prime at that particular time of year is a nod to our roots as a perennial grower. I would pair it with the tall little blue stem grass, Blue Paradise, and the dark, almost metallic heuchera glitter, which is this one. And then add in the purple ornamental pepper and the red petunia Kathie mentioned, and you've got a great 5-part combination. Another fun combination would be based off this tall Celosia dragon's breath. Its shades of rust, burgundy, and green works really well with the petua, which is a combination of a petunia and calibrachoa. This one's called caramel yellow. Then add your heuchera berry smoothie, and you're just playing with all of those tones.
Of course, I can't always convince my customers to go for contrast, but it's so much fun to find coordinating colors. So here's the basic chrysanthemum palette, and so many possibilities of pairing close color cousins.
So this is where my head and heart seem to go the most. Some people find monochromatic design boring, but I think with plants there's still an element of contrast, even though the overall color palette is limited. As I discussed earlier, there's usually one plant that starts it all off. Last fall, it was the pink anemone red riding hood on the left. It matches well with coordinating heuchera, mums, straw flowers, and pansies to give a monochromatic and moody pink and purple look. But there is still the bright yellow eye of the anemone, the dark veining of the heuchera, and the different hues in the mums blooms that give the design interest. You can also see this with the orange, red, and yellow combinations that Kathie has put together. This is where you can also use texture and various neutrals, shades of green, silver, and white, along with burgundy and chocolate brown to give added interest and elevate the monochromatic look.
So let's talk about texture. And here are some summer plants, summer examples of texture, which can be preserved in a display to give continuity right into fall. I like to think of it as adding crunch to your favorite flavor or flavors of color. This could be a last addition. You can try switching them out if you're starting from scratch and seeing which ones add just the right amount of crunch and maybe color. Of course, there's also fall favorites, which provide texture along with their color. Grasses are a great way to add movement, and they'll continue all through winter into spring. Sedums, as Lizzy said, and all the other succulents are always looking their best in fall. And with the right conditions, they can be a perennial addition. Our favorite pairing is Euphorbia myrsinites with Lysimachia. Lastly, to think about gesture and flow, here are some examples of containers in their permanent placement. As the season progresses, the plants fill out, the early spring bloomers are replaced or trimmed, and then given an update for fall.
So on the right was our spring iteration, and in this little planter to the very right, it's a little hard to see, but that is the viola
Peachy.
primrose peach that has that tricolor. So that kind of started this all and lent it into purple alyssum. This was some yellow nemesia, a trifolium, and some yellow pansies, yellow and orange mix to pull out those orange colors. I will admit we did some snapdragons up top and they weren't blooming when they were not blooming when I planted them, and they were a little bit more pink than I anticipated them being, but we work with it. Then come late June, the violas had kind of done their thing. The alyssum was spent. So then we replaced that with these orangey hues of the calibrachoa. We added some tall angelonia in the middle with the white to play off some dusty miller that was in the back. That's a neutral. We've got the pennisetum grass still growing. And that's when we added coleus to give a bright pop of color. And then last week, we trimmed up the coleus a little bit. There is a heuchera. I can't remember exactly which one that was. It might be electric lime. Added in the pansies, strawflower, kale, celosia, and even some evergreen elements thinking about heading into winter.
And here you can see the placement of those planters right behind our big arrow gates, and the planters on either side that are still doing really well since this summer. So I'll sum it up all this way. Consider choosing your plants, keeping in mind not only the current season, but the next to come, or even the next 2 seasons, summer, fall, winter, or fall, winter, spring. If it's a new container, what choices can you make that will provide continuity, while others will be switched out to refresh the season, to reflect the season, or to be an ephemeral highlight? Consider the overall feeling that you'd like to present and how color and texture can provide this. Write it down. Use markers, colored pencils, or paint swatches. Focus on what you want. Our website, bowoodfarms.com, is a great resource for this. Most of the photos in this PowerPoint came from our website. In addition to photos, each plant has a short description and basic parameters, height, width, sun versus shade, and flowering time, to make it easy to make a garden design or a shopping list. So here's a digital sketchbook of one possible container. Start with one key plant. This might be your continuity plant from the previous season, or you might choose a new one, maybe an evergreen, to go through winter instead of the faithful pennisetum. Then pick up on a minor color, go with shades of the same color, choose opposites, or nearby colors on the color wheel. Double check on texture and foliage. Is there too much or not enough contrast? You don't want everything to be the same crunchiness. Eventually, you'll be switching plants out as the winter grows closer, but maybe not all at once. Add and subtract in a gradual way, so that it looks like, oh, it's just happening naturally. Here, we add in holiday greenery and colorful twigs. And lastly, pine cones. So now we're going to show you a couple of examples that we brought so we can work through some of Lizzy's great design ideas.
All right. So this is a planter that is still looks just like this. Still looking good with very minimal effort. A lot of what we have to do has to be minimal effort. We are busy. It's in a bright shade, so that has helped. It hasn't gotten as scorched by the summer sun. But today we're going to pretend that the Coleus has started to peter out. The Tradescanthia has started to get lady and unattractive. Maybe you went on vacation and came back and a quick refresh might include, well, let me get this set up. So this has this Anthurium ghost, as well as
Grand amethyst.
Grand amethyst. That's a really nice one. And it has the Juga. See, I'm very perennial heavy, which I just love that metallic. And then it has, like I said, Coleus and the Tradescanthia coming down. So we're going to pull those out, and we are now going to add an upright celosia, a trailing perennial sedum, and a small evergreen. And what drew us to these plants was first, this one's called Twisted Strawberry, and it's been a favorite since last summer when we first brought it out. I love that hot neon. The neon colors have been really popular, kind of starting from last year, and really this summer you started to see more of them around. But look how it plays with the edging on the sedum, and you just pull those colors together. And then this has this really bright green foliage, so to kind of pull that back in, you can add your evergreen element. And this guy is Thuja Frankie boy. So the heuchera will last well into winter, the thuja will, the sedum will, even the ajuga will. The fern will change and morph a little bit, but this would be a nice combination to go for another couple months.
And just one thing I'd like to say is that this is a plant that is not hardy. It does get hit by the frost, but remember, September, October, even into November, you've got a lot of time, and this guy's going to get big.
Yeah, and if it's just going to be a really quick frost, go out and cover it for the night, or if it's a container, you can move to the garage. Then in the winter, we can also add elements like red twig dogwood stems, winterberry stems, pine cones, those things to add more texture and interest. And then, yeah, do you need the box? We love our Bowood boxes. They come in handy. So yeah, last night when we were picking out combinations, I kind of based everything off of a pansy. So here, we've got this cute, we've had this one's been a go-to for a long time called Midnight Glow. What I love about it is, yeah, the purple on purple with the yellow center eye. I love pansies. So, say we're starting even fresh or some aspect. This would be a little bit more on that monochromatic. I could even leave this guy out, but, wanted to push myself into adding contrast. But as Kathie mentioned, one of our go-tos is the euphorbia. It just trails and it lasts. It'll come back in the spring. If you keep watering through the winter, all of this water, water, water. You will also get a yellow bloom in the spring, which is really fun. It emerges really quickly. So that adds that nice texture. And then, heuchera, I probably like heuchera more in containers than I actually do in the ground. So as Kathie mentioned, you can always find a good color combination. This is a classic obsidian, which actually, even though it's real dark, it has these red tones underneath, which then play back to the daisy, Rudbeckia. But it also plays really nicely with the centers of the Midnight Glow. I really like, they can smell a little bit, but I really like the ornamental kales and cabbages. They've got this really tough foliage. They can handle the cold. I think typically in this region, we're in the city, so we are a little more protected, but they will last through the holidays. January, if we get a lot of snow back and forth, it can make them melt out, but you usually get through the holidays. So that's kind of a big goal for us.
And pro tip, BT.
Yes.
Right? Pre-treat with BT. Don't wait till you start seeing little chewed up bits. Okay?
Because they are the moths will eat them up and the caterpillars will, yeah. So.
So let's throw in this.
It's a naturally occurring bacteria that you can find in most garden centers. You apply it. It's typically used in the vegetable realm. So because this is that ornamental vegetable, and it gets into the gut and destroys them that way, but it is naturally occurring bacteria. And then this is a fun grass. This is Ophiopogon niger. It has green and black tones. Again, the grasses are really nice because they catch the ice in the winter months or the frost. They also can, flow over. You'll often hear about, thrillers, spillers, and fillers. We do those concepts, I just don't kind of mention it as much. So yeah, you could get away with just that, but then you can also add this. And what I see here is you see the purple tones, there's mauve in this cone head. And like other plants, you've got the initial opening, the fully open, and then the fade out. So that's that combo. These are stuffed in here. All right, and then this one is fun. What is this? This is, I believe, yeah. This is what I was referring to. Apple cider mix. So 1 6-pack for $5. You've got butter, yellow, maroon, purple, pink, all sorts of shades. Really pretty. So for that, you can play off of that Anemone Red Riding Hood. Again, you can bring in a heuchera. The sky is champagne. I mean, just look at all these colors, and this will continue to change as the fall goes on. This coreopsis might kind of look like it's on its way out. This could have been in here all summer. You could plant coreopsis in the spring and have it go all summer. I like these black little spent blooms for this time of year. To me, it kind of adds a little bit of a, oh, I didn't realize I was on screen. Adds another textural element and kind of, going into spooky Halloween, you've got these little black bits, but that butter yellow just plays really nicely. Another grass, Carex Evergold. Talk about flow. This is a great one for icy conditions. That'll keep going. The hard thing about the grasses in the spring, you cut them back so you have, if you're keeping them in your container, so you have this period, but we have gotten multiple years off of a grass in a container before. So it's kind of fun. River oats. I mean, talk about that sway and flow. And again, it's just adding another textural element. If you have room, you can pop in a straw flower. If you have more room, you can pop in, this is Celosia Dracula. Again, even within the leaf, you're getting multiple tones. That's a fun one too. And then we'll do one more. Making a mess. This is why we don't wear pretty clothes at work. All right, and then this is another fun favorite. Similar to apple cider, this is red blotch, but again, it has really pretty tones of burgundy, pink, purple. I'm a big pink person. This heuchera is called Paris.
And it has bright pink flowers on it and blooms all summer.
This
has
is
just been trimmed back.
Best blooming heuchera that we've had. And they will be really pretty. So again, one you can have for a long period of time. But if you like those brighter tones, it gives you a nice silver veining and good green tones. Then you can add, this is the little blue stem, Blue Paradise. And I like how the green tones of it play well, and it starts to pull out those purples. To pull out those purples even more, you can add an ornamental pepper. This will get the actual peppers, but we're using it more for its foliage color. And again, look at that dark eye there. And then I couldn't decide which celosia, so I brought both. This one is just intense dark purple. It's got a really lot of good colors in its foliage, those burgundy tones, and then that bright purple. And then again, a smaller twisted strawberry. And then when we talked about the neutrals, I haven't really used alyssum a lot in the fall, but it's being sold. So we've used it in some of our planters this year, the purple. But I'm a big fan of white. White glows at night. And it just adds a little, I think it plays really nicely with the coral bell and adds a little layer. And then can't go wrong, Lysimachia, for that bright green trailer. So.
And what I wanted to say about the alyssum and also the coreopsis, those are cut and come again. If you can keep up with the trimming, coreopsis is a great plant of just, it's so easy. You just grab a hunk and just slide it off the top. Same with the alyssum, and you'll have blooms, in 5 or 6 days.
So that really concludes our talk. I want to thank Kate and the Botanical Gardens for inviting us and offering us this opportunity to speak today. We will stick around afterwards if anybody wants to come up and look at the plants or discuss the plants, but we are now also going to open it up to questions.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, we can come to you. Allison's headed your way. Woman in the green shirt. What's this all?
Thank you for this presentation. Very nice. I'm wondering about the soil and how often you change it in your planters and
Sure.
if you add fertilizer.
Yeah, I'll admit at home I get lazy. It's extremely important. It probably, when I talk about low maintenance, the best way to keep your plantings low maintenance is to use good fresh soil. You don't always have to dig it all out, but sometimes with some of these plants, when you take them out, half the soil comes with it. We have 2 products. We have the Dr. Earth line, which is their pot of gold, and then we also do the Espoma potting mix. But it's worth it. It's worth the effort. I find when my plants are not thriving, it's because I got lazy and did not replace the soil. You don't have to go all the way down, but between drainage and soil and the right size container. Excuse me. Oftentimes people are picking containers that are really small. And if you want these to last and you want to not have to water 5 times a day, the bigger container, good soil, all those are going to make all that effort more successful.
And a good example of that is the planters that you maintain for that condominium down the street.
Right. At one point, one of the first slides, it's a hay rack that we do for a condo, and we plant them in May, the first week of May. We refresh that soil. I mean, they're big 44-inch.
Even bigger.
Yeah, little double hay racks with the liners. They have them on irrigation, but we replace that soil each season. Basically, we dump the whole hay rack and the whole thing in October. We plant it once. It's on irrigation. Nobody touches it otherwise, and it gets dumped in October.
And if you remember that picture was taken maybe like 3 weeks ago. And we had never, the only time we went back there was when Matt went and took the picture.
No, I drive by and wave. Yeah.
Would you address fertilizing? Because I understand pots need fertilizer often.
See where you are.
I'm over here.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, you're fine.
Well, I would say that in our opinion, that's the only place where you really do need fertilizer because it's not real soil. all the potting mixes are made with peat, and so or with some kind of replacement for peat, and so it's not live soil like you have in your garden. Your garden can replete this, replenish its nutrients by adding compost and by the plants themselves adding nutrition, but that doesn't happen in a container because it's not live soil. So yes, we do have different products that and all you have to do is follow the directions. If you're going to use a granule slow release organic product, put that in at the beginning and you're done. Or if you water by hand, you can use a liquid fertilizer that's added to the watering can.
How often?
How often? If you're using a liquid, it's usually about every 2 weeks. And that's especially true for things like petunias and things. There's certain plants, geraniums that are heavier feeders. Like a lot of these items at this time of year, maybe you don't need quite as much fertilizer, but if you're trying to get your petunias and those items to go from spring to fall, then the fertilization and cutting them back mid-season is important.
Well, and the other part of it too is even with perennials. So you may not know this, but we fertilize our perennials at the garden because they are in the nursery. I mean, they are living in little pots. That's the only place that they're living. And so when they get to your garden, they're going to be much happier. But we have to fertilize them because we want them to look really nice for our customers. And so we do fertilize our perennials when they're in the pots. So that's the difference between garden versus, at least in our opinion.
Especially when you're not getting a lot of natural rain, because the rain water helps too. It's a whole different thing than our hose water. Oh, yeah.
Hi, thank you. It was so interesting and pretty. But I wanted to know if, when they say partial sun, is morning partial sun different than afternoon partial sun? And how many hours really is partial sun?
Yeah. That's always a tricky one. I always kind of say, I know we've used a lot of hooker too. I always kind of say everything in St. Louis likes a break from the sun in the afternoon in the summer months. Typically, partial sun would be, early morning or the late afternoon, kind of avoiding that strong 10 to 3 period. For full sun, you need that long, full midday sun to get your blooms.
Yeah, and I would tell you, actually, we always say under 4 hours is shade, 4 to 6 is part shade or part sun, and more than 6 will be full sun. And that's your basic parameters. But then you have to think about the actual place where your plants are. Because if your planters are on a concrete patio or near a driveway or something like that, they're going to get a lot of reflective heat and it's going to be a lot hotter for them. So a lot of times you need to observe and from year to year, figure out if you have the planters in the same place, what are the things that you're going to be your go-to plant. And then you can add other ones that might not be quite as strong and just give them a little extra care.
I think we have one final question from the woman in the middle front.
Hi, I just bought 2 large planters and I wanted to find out, is there a way so that you're only filling the top part of it?
Never.
No. Okay, so can you do...
And that's why David Matern moves his planters around in the early spring when they're empty, because they're not so heavy to move around. But I'll tell you a little example of one thing that happened. I had some great plants that were growing, and then all of a sudden they stopped, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I finally pulled them out. They'd been going for a couple of years, and I discovered that the planter that I had used at Bowood, that it had actually had a plastic bag full of packing peanuts and with soil on top, which I didn't investigate when I first planted these plants. And it was because it was just, it was like for a demo like this. And I didn't realize that there wasn't soil all the way through. But the roots had grown into the plastic and into those packing peanuts, and it was totally disgusting. But it's amazing how plants can survive in that situation, but I wouldn't recommend it.
So you would do good soil all the way down then, even if they're tall.
The only thing I've seen that might be an option, and I've seen this for when people are filling raised beds for the beginning, first season, is using like twigs and sticks and other organic material that will break down to fill up the bottom a little bit, and the soil will kind of integrate it. That can take up some of the volume. But yeah, otherwise, especially if you're going to have a long-term situation, it's really better just to make that initial investment.
Yeah, you could put broken down leaves and stuff like that mixed in with your potting mix if you want, because that will turn it. Yeah, that in the lower edges. But and no gravel or anything at the bottom of the pots. That's a myth. That's not going to help you at all.
All right, there, a hot take right at the end. Well, thank you very much, Kathie and Lizzy. Thank you all for attending. They'll be up here with their plants. They will be up here with their plants for any questions you may have. And of course, I think they're both available at Bowood as resident experts. But thank you all for being here. Thanks again for your patience with parking. Have a great day.